Hey guys, and welcome to the Daniel and Mark show. We're joined here with Daniel and Mark, and this show's proudly brought to you by Hardcore Headstart. In this episode, we are going to cover off a topic around flow state. So, ooh, we're going to talk about what flow state is, whether we think it's possible to get into that state consistently, and also just go through examples of what the benefits are of going to a flow state. How you doing, Daniel?
Mate, I'm absolutely perfect. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. So what? Let's get right into it. What's your understanding of the term flow state, or what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, uh, is it? It's kind of like a. I mean, it's well documented in what a lot of people say flow state is. It's kind of. I think people draw comparables to like that Zen state.
Yeah,
The Zen. I don't know. People think of a monk when they say Zen, and when you say Zen, you think of some form of flow state. And to me, it's kind of just being able to stay, I guess, like focused on what it is you're doing for
yeah,
some sort of period of time, whatever that may be. Um, and there's a lot of, I guess, know what the crap, what what the word would be, but there's a lot to it. If that makes
mm,
sense. It's a very complex topic, and I think um, the more you think about it, and I guess the more you experience different types of flow states and flow states in general, then I guess the more you understand about it. What about
yeah.
you?
What um, what kind of activities like do you think gets you into a flow state? Are there like certain tasks that sort of make you feel like you sort of forget time a little bit, or because that's kind of how
Yep.
I sort of differentiate the difference between focus and sort of being in a flow,
Yep.
although they
Yeah.
have like obviously overlapping. Yeah,
Yeah. I think there's very, very specific times when, say, like I'm reading a book or something like that, I will forget how long I've been doing it for if I'm really enjoying the book, or if I'm just, in that very focused state. The one that comes to mind the most is kind of like that runner's high.
yeah,
When
that's
you're
exactly what I
running.
was thinking.
Yeah. When you're running, you kind of find that certain flow state where you forget about the pain of what you're doing. You forget about how hard it is. You forget about how far you're going, and you're
Mm,
just doing it.
yeah,
Everything, even time, seems to be slowed down. Guess that's the most obvious one for me. And there's specific times, I guess, just in studying and stuff like that, where I can find extreme focus.
mm,
But it doesn't. Finding that real flow state doesn't happen as often. Um, I would find with myself.
yeah. Like let's take the running example. When like how far into the run do you feel like you sort of have that sort of like focus? Is it sort of a few minutes in when you kind of get into a rhythm? Is it sort of like towards the end of a run, or is it halfway through a run, or
It's like 8 kilometers in, roughly.
that's yeah, okay.
Roughly. Because I figure like, and I think that, well, when we won the marathon, and when I've done the half marathon as well, there was two, maybe three different periods. Like 8 to 12 felt like an absolute breeze for me. It was so comfortable. Everything was great. And I think, the 1 to 7 or 1 to 8, those kilometers there, that's when your body's starting to warm up. You're starting to feel all the different, pain points where everything's hurting. And then, that 8 to whatever ended up being 12, and we actually had a stop at 12, or a water break. So that period just there felt so calm, so focused, and all the pain from the 1 to 7 had already been endured. So I understood where my body was at, which means it wasn't getting any worse than that. It was just staying, stagnant. So I had the ability to just, separate my mind from it and just run. What about you?
Hmm. I think like um I find once I'm in a rhythm, so like usually my thoughts wander quite a bit early in the run. So like,
Mm.
just sort of like, oh, I'm running. How do I feel? You know, it alternates from like, what's my breathing like to like, what am I seeing? Oh, a car nearly run me over. Like just all these like little thoughts of like, oh, should I stop? Even like a car pulling up and you going, oh, should I kind of jog and wait for this car, or should I just quickly, you know,
Yeah.
run across the road so that I don't have to wait for this car because it's going to slow me down. I feel like that can break your flow state. So,
Yeah.
whereas like if you've got you're in like this section where you've kind of warmed up, you've got your breathing going, and it's almost like it gets to a point where your mind stops thinking about your breathing, and it's just like every like fourth step is like a like an inhale, and you're
Mm-hmm.
not doing like those short like quick breaths.
Mm-hmm.
And your steps almost feel rhythmic rather than kind of like sort of speeding up and slowing down. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's when I sort of get into the flow state. Um, and I tend to agree with you. It's like, let's say if my upper limit of the run is sort of like 10 kilometers, then I'll feel it at least like 2/3 into the run. So it's very
Mm.
rarely at the start of the run.
Mm-hmm.
um and it's kind of like that dance between like, oh my god, I'm dying, and like, hey, this is like, I'm in rhythm.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I find as well where it's when I convince my brain that it's just happening,
Yeah,
like it's just like, yeah, it is what it is, bro. Just get it done.
yeah,
You know, like when you're fighting, it's like, oh, I can't do this. Oh, it's so hard. Oh, I've got so long to go. Oh, just get to this next kilometer. When I convince my brain, it's just, yeah, nah, bro,
mm.
just shut up and do it. It's just
how
gonna
do you
hurt. Move
how
on.
do you how do you fight the distractions? Do you kind of think your way out of it, or?
Depends on, yeah, yeah, actually, I 100%. That's the way. Like, obviously, it depends on the distraction, but
Yeah,
I find a lot of the running or walking or any of those flow moments happen when I'm solving problems continuously,
yeah,
very quickly. Um, so if I'm like just focused and relaxed and everything like that, and you can't get me out of my kind of flow state or mode that I'm in, it's because I've like just continuously getting wins.
yeah,
And like in my brain or something like that, if I just keep running, I might be solving problems in my head in regards to the business or in regards to my personal life or in regards to some thought that I've been trying to break for the last 3 months. I've found a new avenue for it.
yeah,
That's another little win. So it's like when you focus on things like that and you just keep getting those wins, everything else, the thing that you're doing with your hands or your feet or your body is irrelevant.
yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I know, like, some people will focus on their breath, some people will focus on their like, their steps and try to like, sort of, make that a thing. But then,
Mm,
different things work for different people. It seems like, like one of the most challenging things about running is the mental aspect. So if you can just like focus on like the positive thoughts, then that can sometimes, sort of, um, sort of give you the resilience to kind of and set up the framework for the rest of the run. So that
mm.
might sort of bring everything together as well.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. What other kind of areas do you notice that you get into like
Uh,
a flow
well,
state?
for me personally, it's when I'm doing like repetitive tasks, and it's where actually I don't allow myself to have like frequent breaks. So like I differentiate being productive and being in a flow state by how long I'm doing a task and how how focused I am without distraction. So like I'm not I lose track of time. Number one, that's the biggest indicator. So it's like I have no idea whether it's been like 20 minutes or an hour, like because I'm just like so stuck into it.
Mm,
The second thing is um I'm it almost feels like, again, like with the running, so it's almost like rhythmic. So it's almost like thinking, right, but I'm not getting stuck. It's almost like solving mildly stimulating problems. So I get it in like trading, like sort of doing like going through scanning through my setups, or like um, let's say if I'm renaming like folders or whatever or something like that, where it's kind of like it's repetitive, but you
Mm,
kind of know what the clear outcome is. You're like, okay, I need to trim these videos. So let's say if you've got 100 videos where you have to trim like every and right? That's a defined task that is very easy to look for. You're like, okay, scan through the videos, look for wavelengths that are kind of like there's pauses, look for, you know, um, there you go.
mhm.
And then you cut those
Thanks,
things
Marky. I'm
out.
gonna have to cut that one out. Appreciate that.
There you go, mate. But you get what I'm saying, where it's like it's a
Yeah.
defined task. You know what you're looking for. You know exactly what needs to be done, but you have to do it
Mm,
like over and over and over and over and over again, even though it might be slightly different. That's what
mhm.
kind of gets me into a flow state.
Yeah, yeah, right. No, something similar. I think it's yeah, straight back to the things that you don't have to think about often. If you can just do them repeatedly, it's always going to be easier, and you're getting those wins continuously.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it is interesting. I'm just kind of like trying to assess my own thoughts at the moment. It's like there's two things there. It's like one, when I'm running, if I'm problem solving in my brain and thinking more, then I find some flow state because I'm distracted from my body's pain,
Mm.
right? And the mental, anguish of actually having to achieve those things, right?
You've got giants, mate. You've got giants upstairs,
What
like jumping.
what is that? I'll be back.
Uh, so we're talking about. I think we are talking about like you're talking about like running, and you're talking about how you get
Oh,
into a
right,
flow state.
right, yeah, yeah. The two different kind of thoughts, because yeah, two different thoughts that I was kind of having then. It's like when I'm running, the more thinking my brain is doing is distracting me from the body pain I'm having and the fact of how hard the thing I'm doing is.
Right.
But then when I'm, I guess, just studying or just doing something medial like editing, right?
Mm.
Editing the ums and ahs out, I want to be less kind of thinking in my own brain. I just want to be doing the things that are easier and just getting those small wins continuously, and I can stay in that state for longer. It's interesting how like it's almost like distracting from one thing puts you in a flow state, and not being distracted at all puts you in another flow state. Is
Yeah.
that weird, or is it
No, I think
obvious?
no, I think there's definitely I think yeah, there's definitely different like versions of it, and like how people experience it, um, is always going to be slightly different. But what it all has in common is you feel highly productive. You feel sort of free from distraction, and you're able
Hmm.
to do whatever tasks that you're doing at hand more efficiently.
Hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
it's
for for
interesting.
for me, like I think of the Bruce Lee sort of quote, like water flow like
Be
water.
like water.
Do you know the quote? I can't think of it top of my head, but
If you give me 3 seconds, I can. I actually know. So we spoke about this quote specifically in one of the most recent Hang with Hardcore
bodies.
podcasts.
Yeah,
Yeah. Do you want me to find it? Because I can find it.
yeah. Let's read it out.
All right, no worries. I would just have
As
to.
as you're finding that, the reason why I guess the comparison I would have is it's similar to water, right? So water doesn't often pause. It keeps on, there's always motion. It's what's in motion remains in motion. So it's this idea of whatever task you're doing, you're not pausing and starting and pausing and starting. You're you're constantly going through hurdles without having a lot of breaks in between. That's how I kind of see flow state.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I just have to bring up what is going on here, bro.
A lot of artists describe flow state. So when you're working on a painting for like 3 hours straight and you forget you haven't had a meal like in the last 6 hours or whatever it is. Musicians as well that are jamming together.
Yeah,
Things don't work, and then they get into it. Yeah.
is there something with artists that keeps them in that state? Because like, why do all artists smoke? why do all artists drink coffee and shit like that? I know like
I
nicotine
think
itself
I think
helps the
that's
brain.
I feel like that's a separate thing in itself. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say nicotine really helps um, people get into creative state. I mean, it might, but I don't think the chemical itself. Um, there's no studies to suggest that it does. Um, but yeah, I think
Right.
what musicians, what artists have is they've got triggers, they've got ways to get them back into, you know, that state of mind. But yeah, did you find it?
Yep, I've got it right here. All right. Now, I have been told, because I've read this out recently,
Yeah.
Daniel, do not do the accent. So I will be refraining from doing the accent, okay, baby? Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put water into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Ooh. Damn.
I had to, Bruce Lee's just, he's an OG. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's
One
an
of a kind,
OG,
mate.
but I think you've done the explanation of, what that kind of means to you in decent amount of detail there, right?
Yeah, yeah. How about yourself? Like, do you have any sort of mental cues, whether it's from like when you're like I guess let's take a step back. Like, what are some of the repetitive tasks that you find yourself doing like currently? So I guess we've spoken about running. Um,
Mm.
are there sort of other like repetitive tasks like part of your routine in the morning, whether it's like sort of like going through your trades or um, reading or video editing, anything that comes to mind?
I'd say the things that get into me more of a flow state at the moment are a little bit more creative.
Yeah.
In regards to like editing, um, I find myself very, when I'm actually motivated to do it, find myself very kind of focused in on shooting something,
Yeah.
as in actually filming. Like I can, like the time will pass by very quickly when I'm got an idea that I want to video, and then I've got a video, and then I'm editing the video, and then blah blah blah. Like
Mm,
that whole period, it takes me a little bit long because I'm still inexperienced, but I
mm,
find myself doing it a lot.
yeah.
Well, trying to do it a hell of a lot more, and I find myself not getting sick of it. I do enjoy it at the moment, anyway, or
Yeah.
while I'm doing it. So I think I'd say that's probably the main focus. Like the other ones, in regards to trading, that's just a habit now. It's just go through your trades in the morning and shit like that. So yeah, there's
Mm,
a certain amount of flow state because I've just been doing it for so long.
yeah.
So I'd say there is a portion to it there, but yeah, I'd say flow state to me is like how enjoy like it's something very enjoyable, and you're just so focused in on it that the outside world like literally doesn't matter, and so much time is just poured into it. So I'd say at the moment it's more the creative things.
Mm. Well, I think like I was explaining to you like prior to this podcast that I was going through my trades. So I was just kind of looking at like the different setups, and then also just I noticed like my watch list was sort of going a bit out of control. So I just had way
Mm,
too many, and I felt like it was becoming counterproductive, like having so
yeah,
many lists. And one of the features that I found was, you can create these sections within your watch list, which means that you can have like subsections within each watch
yeah,
list.
yeah, yep.
Um, and I just like sort of scanned through the list, and I found like ones that were, you know, sort of belong to the same family, and I kind of categorized them together and just made sort of fewer watch lists. And
Mm,
that process in itself got me into a flow state. I think also because I was listening to like certain music, um,
okay.
and I lost complete track of time because an hour earlier I just said to you, "Hey, let's do a podcast at 10," and I look at my phone, it's 11, and because I wasn't logged into that account, I didn't get the notifications, I didn't get the cue, like, "Hey, I just
Mm,
made an appointment that I didn't keep." So
yeah.
I think
No,
I
that's
think that's an
interesting.
example. Yeah, that's an example
What kind of
of
music are you
movement.
listening to?
Uh, I think like the genre, like usually like lo-fi is pretty good for focusing.
Hmm.
But yeah, to be honest, like I think as long as the music remains the same, so it doesn't matter so much the genre, but as long as the music sort of sounds the same and it's not sort of changing tempo too much, and I'm
Hmm.
doing a task that's like very specific, very defined, I find myself being able to get into flow state. So it's more about the task than it is like all the background stuff. It just the
Mm.
background needs to be constant in a way.
Mm. I found myself over time, like listening to music, listening to a certain type of music, changing up the music, being able to concentrate, listening to music. And then over time, I just found myself only kind of being properly focused when I'm entirely concentrated on the one thing.
Hmm. With no
And
music or
no music, nothing. Like even if it's like I'm not listening to anything, um, trying to just slow down and do that one thing properly and focus in on completely, then I can achieve that. Like if I'm editing, I want to listen to the voices, I want to hear the tonality, I want to hear the story. And even if at the moment I can find myself, even if it's medial, like cleaning or something like that, I actually either listen to something sometimes that's like literally nothing. I'm not nothing. I'm not, or
Hmm.
more often I'm not listening to anything. I'm just doing that one thing and focusing in on that one thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's good to mix it up.
Mm.
It's sort of like like have you done like a workout listening to a podcast versus like listening to like really hype music compare and then doing it without like
Yeah,
any music at all? It
yeah,
drastically makes the training session completely different, don't you think?
yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think you train for different things when when you have that different kind of stimuli.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's
if
right.
I'm training, yeah, go so.
I was just gonna say, so like if you've got high tempo music, that's gonna help with intensity.
Yeah,
If you've got the like podcast going, it kind of just gets you through like you know your intensity is probably going to be lower, but you're kind of
mm,
able to plan or be more strategic and like, okay, what do I want to do next? Because
mm.
it's more
I
calm, I think. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I actually, whatever, if I'm working out or something or doing something like that, I do it on purpose what I'm listening to.
yeah,
So if I'm looking to burn myself out just
mm,
because I want to for some apparent reason, then I'll
yeah,
listen to some like drill or some shit,
yeah,
like some savagery, like just some shit like that, some disgusting music. Not screamo because if you listen to screamo, you're a warmer.
yeah,
Um, if I'm listening to a podcast or something like that, I'm doing like more stretching or light work, just kind of like trying to do some body movement or something like that. If I'm listening to no music, I'm trying to expand my brain because I want to hear all the pain that my brain's going through so that I can
yeah.
deal with that shit and then try and expand it.
Yeah,
Does that
100%.
make sense?
I have nothing worse than like doing like a really challenging workout and like you've got like a David Attenborough like narration on your audible book and you're like this is way too slow
Yeah, absolutely.
because
David,
you don't focus on either of them, right? You don't hear the audio book, but then also you're not getting pumped up for your workout.
yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I think that's where the thing I was talking about before about like distraction comes in.
Hmm.
It's like I find myself if I get pulled out for a second, it's harder to get back in to that flow state the second time. You know what I mean? So I just try and limit the things that can pull me out.
Hmm.
I think you can achieve flow state or some form of like Zen
Hmm.
in quotation marks, doing anything, even like medial tasks and shit like that.
Oh, 100%. So I was gonna say, like, let's say if you happen to do laundry for the whole household, right? You
Yeah,
decide to be a good Samaritan or like it's part of your job to fold clothes or whatever,
yeah,
and you've got like 3 hours worth of like folding to do. I'm sure you'll find a flow state after a while because you're doing the more or less like the same task,
yeah,
and you've
yeah,
got
yeah,
like
yeah,
hours of doing it. Yeah.
yeah.
So complexity of the task plays a big role, I feel.
Absolutely. I think it just depends on where you're at in like that day as well. there's some days where I like folding clothes for me. I'll be honest with you guys. Folding clothes for me is my least favorite job. I hate it so much. And I don't even fold clothes. I hang them up. I just hate it. I just can't get my brain around it. So I'll try and focus myself off the task. But if I'm doing something that I don't like really dislike, I know that's a silly one to dislike. Like I'll
No.
completely fine cleaning the bathroom,
Yeah.
like cleaning the toilet, I'm completely fine. I don't give a shit. Putting clothes away, I don't
I
like.
think I
But
think it's
yeah.
I think it's all the like extra shit, right? Like the socks and the undies and like
Ah,
singlets and stuff. It's like if it's all shirts and hoodies, it's fine. It's just like pop pop like
I still hate it. But doing the pain of like, I put 2 socks in the wash, 2 socks in the dryer, and there's 1 sock.
or three come out and you're like
Yeah. What the fuck? Right. But yeah, if I'm doing something like that, I'll distract myself by listening to a podcast or listen to a video or some shit like that. But with most other things, I'm like, because I think that's maybe ties in with like some of the Japanese philosophy I listen to a lot. Is like try and slow down and do as many things properly as possible. Someone to like Jiro is like, just do that one thing that you're doing at the moment and pay attention to that one thing as much as possible. Because in my personality, it's like run, go, 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 go. You know what I mean? So I have to do the opposite to kind of compete with that to make sure that I'm staying in a state where it's like, now, are you just running, just doing, or are you actually thinking properly and all that kind of stuff? So I try and
what
teach that.
what
So,
what like what time of the day do you find you're more likely to be in like that focus distracted
morning,
free state? Morning, definitely.
always morning, always
Yeah.
morning,
And you've
100%.
experimented with like sort of afternoon and sort of like
Yep.
evenings, and you just find way more focus.
Yeah. I've worked, thankful to work every freaking shift that's ever been. Like
Yeah.
I've worked the 10 p.m. to like 4 a.m. I've worked all that kind of stuff, and I cannot focus in anything I'm doing unless it's like around in between the hours of like 9 a.m. to like 1 p.m.
Right.
I'm like, wow, this is good. This
Yeah.
is mad. For that, medial shit, but that period, I'm sick.
Have you come across people that are the opposite, or like have you come across anyone that like just works better at night or in the evenings or late in the morning?
I've I've come across people who say they do, but
Yeah, but
I'm
yeah,
like, does that make sense? Like, if you think about the body itself, it's like how, like, even us in regards to like evolution, shit like that. How on earth can we be more productive in the not dark time, in nighttime?
I
Like, we
think
need the sun, we need all that kind of shit.
yeah, I
I don't know.
think I think for
It's my
like
view.
I think for overwhelming like amount of majority of people, the morning and your circadian rhythm is certainly like favored uh towards the morning, like earlier
Mm,
routines. But like I'm listening to an audio book called Why We Sleep at the moment. So it
Matthew
kind of,
Walker.
yeah, that's right. And he talks about like two different sort of uh like two different types of like people. So he actually acknowledges that there is the night owl person, the person who's more
Mm,
productive later in the day, and like it's unfortunate for them because you know almost like 70 to 80% of jobs that are white collar is around that 9 to 5 routine, 8 to 4, you know, um, but not very much variation from that. So for these people, it's always a struggle because they'll if their day started at sort of like 12 o'clock in the afternoon and finished at sort of like 4 in the morning, they'd be way more productive.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting. There's like the people that we've heard from, like it definitely sounds like a load of crap because you can't look at the
mm.
bigger picture and you're like, is this person productive at all? Like full stop.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
what's the majority of people that are actually nighttime people that I'm like, this is not backed by science, it's just my opinion. I feel like it's very low.
Mm.
And even then, the people who say they're nighttime people, like I'm sure there's people who say they're nighttime, which can widens the percentage of people who think they are. The people who are truly like genetically able to be more productive in the night,
Mm.
like I think the majority is definitely, get up when the sun rises, go to sleep when the sun goes down.
Yeah.
And I think people's just sleep schedules are so they don't
Mm.
actually ever get into that state. They're always in a state of tired and stress and anxiety because they got jobs and stuff like that as well, which is, that just hurts them again. So
Mm.
I think there's so many different factors to that. But I just know me individually, my willpower is an all-time high
Mm.
in the morning.
You know what?
Especially.
I think like maybe the exception to the rule, right? And like a big part of it is making a lot of like, sort of like challenging, like difficult decisions during the day, and then by the end of the day, you kind of make poor decisions, right? And you've got less
Mm,
focus. Uh, but what if like your your day kind of looks like having lunch and just chilling and just hanging out with friends, and then in the evening you go into the studio, you make music.
sure, great point. Well, like, can you not get into that flow state in the morning of making music at like 9 a.m.?
I wouldn't say that you couldn't, but I'd say that like I think not everyone is wired exactly the same. As in, like, I don't think
Yeah, that's fair.
biologically, everyone's
That's
exactly
fair.
the same. Mm.
That's fair. I said, yeah. I feel like the majority would benefit from getting their sleep, kind of back on track, and then trying,
Mm.
kind of tracking how the decision making and how their productivity is if they worked from that like 6 a.m. till like 3 p.m. or some shit.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
I'd be interested. I'd be interested to see.
Yeah, yeah. I think I think at the very least you have to if you're like a night person, quote unquote, then trying the early routine and doing both and seeing what works better for you is usually the
Mm,
way. It is annoying when like um when you hear like you know someone feels so adamantly about the one perspective but never sort of like trying it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so
sure,
it goes
sure.
both ways. It goes both ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
Well, you have for the first time in the Daniel Lamar, shows history. You've also got some notes as well. So,
What?
what else have you got on that little list of notes that you've got?
Yeah, for sure. I think we've covered most of them, but
Yeah.
pretty much like I guess sort of like beverages and like sort of food is something we
Mm,
haven't covered yet. So like there's water, coffee, sugar,
hmm.
juices, vitamins. Does that sort of play a part into you being able to pick up where you left off and get into that flow state quicker?
Mm. Well, I only within the last year have worked out that I'm very intolerant to caffeine,
Yeah.
like very intolerant. So, I was taught for a long time, coffee was like it gives you this little bit of a high, like little bit of a high, and then it gives you this massive draw down,
Crash, yeah.
right? Yeah. And for a lot of people, it's actually, I don't think the drawdown is as well, it's not because I'm intolerant to it, right? So my drawdown is
Mm.
considerably fucking just more, it just sucks. So now when I have coffee, a big thing for me is swapping to decaf and still with the coconut oil, which kind of helps subdue the facts of the come down a little bit.
Mm.
So I don't get any kind of like, I wouldn't say I don't get any mental clarity from coffee or any pump up from coffee anymore. And I don't get any drawdown from coffee. I just like the taste, right? So that's kind of out the window. Um, and then water's always been a big one for me. Drinking shitloads of water has always just helped, especially in the morning, because obviously we're dehydrated after we sleep. So
Mm.
wake up, drink as much water as possible. I drink probably too much, to be honest, in the morning. I drink like I drink like 2 liters, maybe 3 liters, like very quickly.
Do you get up during the night, or do you usually have like a solid 7 8 hours? Like, do you have any breaks in your sleep?
I'd say on average, I don't have breaks,
Yeah, that's good.
but
That's really good.
yes, sometimes now and then, I
Yeah,
get a
yeah.
little, I get But I'd say on average, no, I'm all good.
I say
What about you?
for me personally, I get up once on average throughout the night. So either that's going to the toilet or I kind of roll around and go, well, like it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I go back to bed. So on average, I'm up like 15 minutes in. I think there might be some science to that because like some people suggest like uh, our ancestors used to sort of sleep like 4 hours, and then they had a period where they'll wake for like an hour or two, and then they go back to bed. So there might be more to it,
Yeah,
which is
I think
interesting.
I've heard of this biphasal sleeping or something, isn't it?
Yeah, but I guess like for me, I was going to give you a tip, but I don't think it applies to you, which is like when I get up during that period, I'll just try to drink about like a glass of water, so that way I'm
Yeah.
still hydrated throughout the night, and then I'll have the glass or two in the morning like you do when I wake.
Yeah, yeah. Dylan does the exact same thing because we had a morning routine. That's something he said. He wakes up at the same time every day, like pretty much 4 a.m. every morning. He goes to the
Mm.
toilet and stuff like that, and then has a glass of water. And then when he wakes up, he's a little bit more hydrated.
Yeah,
But yeah, I guess as well as it depends as well as like what time if I go to sleep and everything goes perfect, and I wake up at my wake up time, whatever that may be.
your ideal
I
time
really
it's
my
six
ideal
fourteen
time.
26 seconds.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Then I don't really wake up throughout the night. So I'm
yeah,
really blessed in that. But I'm not sure about the quality of sleep I'm getting at the moment anyway, because I think I have like sleep apnea, which is sick.
yeah. Sleep
I
on your
snore a
side.
shitload.
Try to sleep on your side.
Oh, I used to sleep on my side all the time. Then as I've gotten older, for some reason I transitioned to my back,
Tennis
and
ball,
now I
tennis.
just
You can. There's this trick where you put duct tape in a tennis ball. Like it doesn't have to be a duct tape, but you just find a way to put a tennis ball in your back. So like every time you roll onto your back, that's like your cue. Like
it hurts and shit. Now I just got my missus who punches me in the back every time.
uh, that works too.
But
So
for
like yeah, go on.
I was gonna say, yeah, for a bit there, I was like waking up, like catching my breath and shit like that. But it seemed to have gone away for it now. So I don't know
Yeah,
what's going on there. We're figuring it out.
yeah. It could be allergies and like pollen and stuff too. Do you get hay fever? Or?
Yeah, really bad.
Yeah,
That's the nasally part of today.
yeah, yeah. So like I guess like continuing on with the conversation, like it's sort of around like hydration and like sort of other like natural like stimulants like caffeine.
Hmm.
Uh, like have you like you've heard the term half life, right? Often described as like how long a stimulant or a drug stays in your body, or like how long
Hmm.
it kind of works in your body, right? This is probably really obvious. I don't know if it is, but I found it interesting where like the way it was explained, half life actually means um, the period where the stimulant or drug has half its effect in your body, but it doesn't mean that like it's done. So like for example, caffeine, right, has a half life of um, 5 hours, which means that caffeine is still in your body for 10 hours. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
So like
it's like half the dose after 5 hours.
yeah, so it doesn't mean it's out of your body. I always assumed like half life just meant like it was just like a term, but it was actually after that period or the half life, it's out of your body completely. But no, it just means
Mm,
half of it has left your body, but half of it is still there. So
mm,
put that into the context of caffeine, right? Like if you have a coffee at 4 o'clock in like or like let's say six, people who have coffee in the evenings and they're like, oh, it doesn't affect me, I can go to bed, it's fine, yeah. So
mm.
let's say you have a coffee at let's say you have a coffee at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That coffee is actually still in your body 10 hours later at midnight.
Mm. Absolutely.
So if you're someone who goes to bed at 9, that's 3 hours where your body still has caffeine in it. So,
Absolutely.
and then you take that further. There's people who have coffee at 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, right after dinner. So how does that affect you? Like from like my
Mm.
maths isn't great, but like let's I assume
It's like
that's
3 or
still
4 a.m.
yeah 4 a.m. in the morning, right? Like you still have caffeine in your body. That's a terrible
Mm.
thing. So I think the general advice is not to have coffee in your body after midday, 12
It's
o'clock.
like 5 or 6. Yeah.
Oh, 12
Yeah.
o'clock even. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Depends when you
absolutely. Like it
dep-
just,
depends when you go to bed, but like let's say if you're in bed by 10, then work backwards 10 hours. You shouldn't have it after
yeah,
12 p.m.
absolutely. I think people just don't question things enough. It was like, I didn't question caffeine for a long time. It was like, oh, everyone just has caffeine. Everyone feels shit after they have a coffee. Everyone has to go to the toilet after they have a coffee.
Yeah.
I was like, one day I just realized, dude, caffeine actually just doesn't make me feel good. I love the taste of it now, which is coffee specifically. But
Yeah.
caffeine, energy drinks, blah, 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 it doesn't make me feel good. So
Mm,
why on earth am I trying to make myself feel shit through something I know? Like, why am I trying to make myself feel good out of something that doesn't make me feel good?
mm,
That doesn't make sense, right? And that's like back to the point of this. Like, there's many things that may work for you that won't work for me. There's things that'll work for me that won't work for you. So, and in another Hang with Hardcore podcast, we're going to get to it, but there's a thing called self-quantified movement where it's like you have to experiment with everything in your life to try and find, what 1%ers add to you specifically,
mm. Yeah.
and test continuously.
Yeah. Everyone's got different sensitivities, and the first step is to figure out like to be self-aware.
Mm,
For me, like alcohol affects me. Like I've got like a huge sensitivity to alcohol.
yeah.
Um, and for you, like it seems like caffeine, coffee is a big
Mm,
thing. So you have to be a lot more methodical about it. Like when you choose to
mm.
consume it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember back in like the grind days of like the first dojo, first Springville house, we were
Yeah.
having cups of coffee that I shit you not, like they were like bowls, like mini bowls, and we were just drinking them all day, like back to back to back, proper coffee. And
Yeah.
I wonder, I was like, but I would never, I drank them, we drank them so much that I would never get that come down phase until I was like going to sleep. That's how much we were drinking. It was fucking madness. But like to the kind of point of today of like trying to find that flow state is like if you're coming down from a coffee, you're not gonna be able to find that flow state, right? Like how do
Yeah.
these different things affect you so that you can find that state to be able to, maximize your productivity?
Mm. I have read that like up until like 200 milligrams of caffeine is for most people can actually help people get into that flow state.
Mm,
Um, but more than that, and then you just start to get like anxious and like sort of um, it becomes counterproductive to trying to
mm,
get into that flow state. So it's worth knowing if you want to try to hack yourself into that flow state. But like let's kind of wrap this up with like maybe a few pointers that you think sort of will work for most people. For me, like getting into a flow state, number one is uh, if you're doing a repetitive task, whether it's writing or video editing or going through your trades or whatever, try to pick up where you last left off and just go through the last two or three activities or tasks that you've just done and go through the motions of just doing it again, because that cues your brain to going, okay, that's right, this is how I do the task, rather than trying to start something new, because you're
mm,
less likely to get into a flow state, or it's going to take longer because you need
mm-hmm.
to warm up your engine. So
Yeah,
that's
Ripper.
that's my one takeaway. Yeah.
Ripper.
And you?
I would just say experiment with the different things that allow you to have more concentration.
Yeah.
So just because you've been doing it forever doesn't mean it works perfectly for you. Try different things. Um, there's a lot of studies that say environment is really important. So find a certain environment that motivates you more. Blah blah
Mm.
blah blah. I mean, we've just spoken about it on the entire podcast. There's different things, so go and check it out.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. I think uh, finding tasks that you naturally gravitate towards. So like if it's something where you find like you can concentrate or focus on anyway, then that's probably the thing that you're more likely to be able to get into a flow state. If
Yeah,
it's a challenge and you really hate the task already, that's where it might be tricky to force yourself to get into that flow state.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm pretty sweet with that one. You got any
Yeah.
final closing things?
Nah, I think like just maybe we'll just share like one thing, that's on our mind, or one thing that we're working on this week, or have been
All right.
working on.
I might give a joking response. I've been working on growing a beard for 2 weeks, and I, after today's session of seeing myself on camera, have officially given up. Because
give us a lift of the chin.
it looks as if, right, like, what is this here? God forsaken Christ! Like, it honestly looks like I've shaved my pubes and stuck into my face. It's terrible.
I'm not gonna lie. It kind of looks like you've jokingly tried to grow out like your sideburns, like around your neck.
So mean. Yeah. So the one thing I've been working on the last 2 weeks is a beard, and I have failed miserably, my friend. I knew I was gonna. It's just
I feel like this is one of those, like, if you post a poll on Instagram, like cop or drop, it's like 99% like
Absolutely.
drop.
Yeah. And there's that one person who's just like trying to be nice. They're like, if you kept trying growing, it would be okay. I asked G before, I was like, oh, what do you think of the beard? Should I, persist, or should I give up? And he goes, mate, please give up. Like, seriously. Like, for your own good, it's distracting.
Yeah.
Like, it's horrible. What about you?
Yeah, for me, it's this past week is probably just intensity. So like, all of my tasks is a lot of the stuff that I've been doing is being like patient and sort of like endurance, right? Like stamina, trying to stick something out, do something longer, try to go further, right? But this week has just been about intensity, right? Like, how can I sort of do quicker sprints, in like metaphorically, whether it's through short periods of focus on task, or like or on jogs. So like just trying to pick up the pace, like at boxing, like trying to train with more intensity rather than trying to train longer. So I'm just experimenting with that. But yeah, that's kind of what's on my mind at the moment.
That's beautiful. All right, well, let's pack her up.
Let's pack her up. I reckon we could potentially make this part of each segment at the end, just kind of like one thing that we're sort of.
I very much enjoyed doing that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously mine was a joking response, but I enjoyed it.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in and listening to this podcast. Hopefully, you've taken a couple of things away from this. If you enjoyed it, make sure you share the podcast around. Otherwise, just give us a like. It helps the algorithm, and leave a comment if you enjoyed it or if you have any thoughts.
Absolutely. And subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you can know when we're posting. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Goodbye.
You know what to do.